Heavenly Father, I am so grateful to be a part of this dynamic church that cares so much about you and is willing to invest so much of its time, talent, and energy and resources to spreading the gospel in this region, Lord. It's 25 years of Sally and I have attended this church, and we've been so grateful for the blessing it's been for us and our family. And we're so excited to be a part of a church that is committed, nearly obsessed with this idea of advancing the kingdom. And we just ask you to bless these good people who came out today. We ask you to bless this campaign, that we might be successful in carrying out the work you've set before us. In Jesus' name, amen. I would like to take an opportunity to thank the team. You may remember that in 2008, 9, 10, we had the extraordinary campaign, which, among other things, rose up the church out in Raymond. At that time, we sought to get the services of a consultant. And the consultant was generous, fine company, great reputation, and they helped us a lot. But consultants are expensive. And so this time, when Bruce asked me to consider leading the team again, we talked a lot and prayed a lot about whether we needed to do that again. Didn't we have enough talent in the church and in the congregation to carry off a campaign similar to the one we did in 2008 and do it without having to pay a consultant? Well, the decision was made to do that. So we have saved ourselves over $80,000 in consulting fees, but we placed a huge burden on members of the church staff who have picked up all this additional work for the campaign and the raising up of the church in Kittery on top of all the work they do now. And they're doing that with a smile, and they're doing it gratefully, and they're doing it with great amount of excitement. But I do want you to meet them and to have them stand up. So you stand and stay standing, and when they're all done, I'll let you thank them. So Deb Myers, who's our administrative manager, she's the one that gives me access to the staff. So if I need help on the staff, then she's the one I would go through. She's been a great supporter of this whole program. Catherine Blake has done a tremendous job as a communications director. Catherine, yep. Thank you. Allie Bosquin has been leading the team out at Kittery Point. She's the one that's going to brief you shortly on the details of what that place is going to look like. Lisa Trial is in the accounting department. She's helping us with finances and how we handle all this, all the giving and so on. I want to mention Joe Summers and his tech team. Joe's over here, done a great job putting all the materials together for us. Julie Huey is always there every event. She's the event coordinator. She makes sure everybody feels so welcome, and she does such a great job getting us ready for all these different events. Leanne Knight, in fact, the whole staff, all the staff has done a remarkable job and cheerfully and very professionally helping us get ready for this program. So thank you all for that. Thank you. A little round of applause for them. They've done a wonderful job. That's your church staff in action. I'd be remiss if I also didn't thank Jim Surplus and the Board of Elders. Huge support. Jim has given a wonderful amount of his time. At every presentation, the Elder Board has been well represented, very enthusiastically supporting what we're doing here. I couldn't feel more encouraged by the leadership. And finally, of course, our senior pastor, Bruce Boria, whose passion for this project knows no bounds. He is such a catalyst. He's such an encourager for all of us as we work to make this happen. So, Bruce, I thank you for your leadership, as always. Great job. Yeah, you bet. He's a man with a vision. So, I'm going to give you a quick look at what the evening's going to look like. In just a few moments, I'm going to give you over to Deb and Allie, who are going to walk you through the Kittery Point project. After that, I'll come back and talk a little bit about how to give and how to support that project. And then Bruce will come up and close us. I guarantee you there's no greater Patriot fan in the world than me, and we will be out of here in plenty of time to get back and sit before TV sets and cheer on the Patriots over the Seahawks. So that's the plan. Even though the FAQ covers this, I did want to just refresh one more time what it is we're trying to accomplish with the one campaign. And the first priority, and all the monies that flow into this campaign will all go to this first priority project until it is satisfied, at which time then the spillover of additional resources will go to pay off the debt. But we have budgeted $750,000 which includes a 25% contingency fee of $150,000 to completely renovate that 188-year-old building. Now, the contingency fee may seem high to you, but if you think about the age of the building and what might be behind the walls, even though they've been looked at by several general contractors and other subs, there's always the possibility of a surprise. So we built that in. We are committed, and I think we're already on track to be able to get that building open on time and on budget. That's our prayer, and it's our hope and our goal. The on-time part is no later than September 10th, 2017. So we've got about 10 months to get the job done. The second priority is one that continues to be a high priority. Earlier campaigns have addressed some of the debt as well, and we have paid down, in addition to our normal payments over the last 8 years, we've paid over $700,000 in additional pay down money. We're down to about $1.2 million in debt. We have a good, generous terms. They're not onerous at all, but at the same time, it's about $135,000 of debt service that we're dealing with. Paid off, that $135,000 would more than cover the operational costs of the new church. So we're looking forward to seeing that go away as well. So at this time, I want to bring up Deb Myers, who's going to talk to you about the Kittery Point renovation plan.
Thank you, Dennis. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. I know that Sunday night at 5:30, when it starts to get dark out, is a little onerous to come out, but this is really important to all of us, so I want to express my sincere appreciation for you coming out tonight. I'm going to start to talk about the Kittery Point renovation plan, and then Allie, who is actually the dreamcaster on what the building will look like and how it will operate functionally, is going to come up and share that information with you. I don't know how many of you have been out to the Kittery Point building, but this is my inspiration. If you are in the sanctuary, and when you're turning around and you're walking out, there is a prayer wall. Now, the prayer wall's been there for a long time. We don't know how long, but we know it predates any Bethany presence. And on the prayer wall, there is a prayer, and it's in lime green crayon. I don't know if that was intentional, but it's in lime green crayon, and it's fading. And it's sort of symbolic about what was happening to the church. But the prayer says, Heavenly Father, help FBC give this building to another church so that the gospel may be preached here and Kittery reached for years to come. Amen. And underneath the prayer, in a totally different color and very bold, also perhaps symbolic, it says, April 2016, answered, welcome Bethany Church. Now, that in and of itself is way more inspiration than I personally need. But when I looked at the history of this church, the church actually dates back to 1631. And if you look through the history, people have a long, rich tradition of fighting for the right to worship there. And so now we've become part of that rich tradition. And so when I look at it and I say, okay, we're part of that rich tradition, we are the answer to someone's prayers, that's a very onerous responsibility. But yet, still, it's an amazing privilege and honor. So today, Joe Summers and I had an opportunity to go out to interview someone at our Raymond campus. And while we were talking to her, as Joe was warming up the camera, she had her little stepdaughter there. And her stepdaughter's 8. Now, the little girl, Adele, received her Bible, her first Bible, from Bethany Church today on the Raymond campus. cutest little thing you ever saw. She really styled it out. She had on this cute little white dress with all the bling, and she had on her fringe cowboy boots, and she was really styling it out. Very bright little girl, cute as a baby bunny rabbit. And she's sitting there, and, we're talking, and her mother said, in 2008, somebody was sitting there thinking about the Raymond campus, and I was in the darkest point I had ever been in my entire life. And I'm looking at her, and she's very vibrant, and she's amazing, and she's got this amazing little girl with her. And she said, and here I am today. So I asked her, I said, well, what do you think about this Kittery Point thing? And she said, well, how many people do you think there are in Kittery Point just like me, where I was in 2008? And she said, it's personal to me. So I went back to talking to the little girl who, in 2008, was probably a gleam in her mother's eye. She had just received her first Bible. But the interesting thing about it is, because of their presence, their family presence, this little 8-year-old girl has already read the Bible cover to cover. And so when you ask yourself, why go to Kittery Point? I have to tell you, prayers answered, 8-year-old girl who's read the Bible cover to cover, I don't need any more to know that this is the right thing to do. So what I want to talk to you about is what are the objectives that we are embracing while we move forward with the planned renovation of the building. Now, we're not going to create the Taj Mahal. And so, we've received some emails that people say that we ought to really do something special there, and we are going to do lots of special things there, but creating the Taj Mahal is not one of them. So these are the criteria that we are using when we look at the renovation. First and foremost, health and safety. It's really important for us to ensure that the building is not only compliant, but is accessible. So if you were at our prayer and dedication service, you'll notice that those beautiful windy staircases, Jim Surplus loves those staircases, by the way. He's sitting in the back of the room saying, yeah, no, I don't. But those beautiful winding staircases are a lot of fun to look at. They're traditional, they're beautiful, but they're a little hard to navigate. And we did happen to have someone who was in a wheelchair who attended that meeting. And so with the help of some of our elder board, we actually were able to get that person into the sanctuary. But you'll be very happy to know there is an elevator in the plan. So we will be putting an elevator in that building so that every part of that building is accessible to everyone. And that's just an example of health and safety. The other thing is that we want sound, reliable, internal systems. Now, you've been in the building, many of you, and you know that we have electricity there. You'll also remember if you were there for prayer and dedication, or if you were there for the Vision Night meeting, it can get pretty cold in there. And the building is not very efficient from a heating perspective. So we do plan to put in new HVAC and new plumbing, and we do plan on replacing all the electrical wiring in the building. In order to do that, we're going to actually demo the internal walls. So we'll take the internal walls down, including ripping out all the internal systems, and then we'll replace it with new. And the reason we'll replace it with new, and the reason why that's important, is because we want the building to be efficient, and we don't want to renovate the building 5 years from now, say that we have to go in and start ripping walls down so that we can replace or repair any existing system. And then the other thing is that, again, if you've been in there, you'll notice that some of the classrooms are very small. We are a church that gathers as a family. So in order to gather as a family, we're going to open up some of the walls there so that we'll have spaces that are convenient for people to gather, whether they be small groups or large groups. And you'll notice that in all of our Bethany campuses, we employ a great deal of technology to deliver our worship services. And that's really important to the style of worship that we have. So we will be putting all new AVLA into that building so that we can deliver the style of worship that we do in Raymond and in Greenland. And then finally, we just want you to know that we realize that every dollar that comes into the campaign was earned by someone who was working hard for that money. We understand that the resources that you put into the campaign, whether it be a donation of material or a donation of time or a donation of cash or another asset, we realize that you worked hard for that. And so we are committed to being good stewards of that money and to use it wisely. It is God's money. He has brought us to Kittery Point, and we will continue to use it wisely. So an example of how we do that is, we actually had 4 architects go through that building. Now, they ranged in price all the way up to $64,000. We were able to hire an architect. I'm very pleased to say that we are launched. Our architect has gone in and is preparing the current construction drawings and will be designing the building, much like how Allie is going to describe it to you. But we are very good stewards of your money, and so we were able to choose an architect who could deliver exactly what we wanted, and we negotiated him to a price of $13,500. So just don't negotiate with Allie or I. And we've had an enormous amount of support from the congregation. The building's an 1828 building. We needed some structural engineering. We had 2 structural engineers come forward who offered their services, and they offered their services free of charge. They have been amazing in helping us go through that building. So God is blessing us abundantly, and there's no question that He will do that, continue to do that as we continue to do His work. So I wanted to just briefly tell you what the proposed building upgrades are from an infrastructure perspective. As I said before, we are going to replace the plumbing, the HVAC, and the electrical. We're also going to insulate, because the building is highly inefficient. We're going to insulate the walls and the ceilings and the floors. We may replace the siding. We're not sure yet. And we will replace the windows. If you've been there during any kind of, if I stood outside the building and I blew on the building, the windows would rattle and shake. So we will be replacing those. We are installing an elevator, and we are looking at moving the front entrance from where it is now over to the side of the building. Because if we move it over to the side, the handicapped accessibility will be much improved, and we can address some of the parking challenges. So that's what we're planning on doing with the building. We will repaint it. We will put in some new flooring. But that's the majority of the renovation. So I'm going to ask Allie to come up, and she'll show you all the pictures and the real creative designs that she's bringing to bear on this. Allie?
Thank you. How many of you have been to the campus? Wow, almost everyone. Well, great, this will be easy then. We get to have the fun part. We get to talk about what it's going to look like. So you just see this first slide, we just show the front of the building and the side. And that's the entrance that Deb was talking about, moving it along to the side. You can just see the handicap ramp on the front to the side of the front door that is not accessible. It's not to code. A wheelchair wouldn't actually be able to navigate that as it is. So we want to eliminate that and make a much more accessible building. We're looking at taking the front door. This first picture shows you as if you were inside the building looking straight toward the front door. We want to change that front door into a window. And doing that will allow us to have more fellowship space. It will also allow us to extend some of our parking to the front door outside and move the handicap accessibility ramp into a deck that will be facing the side of the building, which is that middle picture. And what I love the most about this part is that when you were at the building, if you continue down the road, up beyond the trees, there's a school. There's an elementary school, and it's full of 406 kindergarten through third graders. And we know that those parents are driving, many of them are driving their kids to school. And those kids are coming from all of the community areas, not just Kittery Point, but all of Kittery. So when you think about the parents driving by our building every single day, and think about bringing the deck to the side, bringing the entrance right to where their cars are driving by. It will give us a great opportunity to expand out and welcome them in, maybe invite them into some programs that we can have going on during the week. So it'll be much more inviting and much more accessible for everyone. This last picture is a picture of the window, which is where the door would go, the new front door would start, and that's what would be on to the side of the building. This is inside that fellowship hall space, and Deb was talking about we want to create spaces for fellowship, and so one of the ways that we want to do that is to take this kitchen, which is actually a pretty good sized kitchen, we want to shrink that down a little bit, make it a little bit more user-friendly, to make it a cafe experience. So when you walk in, you're going to come right in, just like you would invite someone into your home. You're going to come right into a space where they'll be welcoming, there'll be information centers, but there'll also be a place for you to get coffee and to have food before you even head upstairs to the sanctuary. Because like any of our, unlike either one of our campuses right now, the sanctuary is actually on the top floor. So we're going to be accessing it a little bit different than we do on the other campuses. You can see the third picture is the one of the current kitchen that we'll be renovating. The rest of those pictures all show you what the inside of that fellowship hall look like. So these drawings are not to scale, but they are just a beginning picture of what we could do in the building. Now, like Deb mentioned, we do have an architect that we have brought on board who is right now creating the as-is plan, and then from there we'll be working on developing the new plan, and you'll be able to see those pictures coming up too, hopefully shortly in the new year. So you can see one of the things that we need to add into this floor plan on this is bathrooms, because currently there are 2 bathrooms, single stall bathrooms on the main floor, and then 2 in the basement that you probably would not want to use. So we need to do a little renovating to add some more. So we want to keep one of the existing bathrooms, and that will allow for it to be handicap accessible, also be a family bathroom. And then we can add the other 2 bathrooms that will have stalls in them. So we can do a lot with that. Now, if we were to leave the fellowship hall and head up those winding staircases that Deb was talking about, we would come into the sanctuary. And so some of the things that we want to do in the sanctuary is to, the AVLA, all of the lighting and all of the sound that we use, we need to bring that into the building. Because right now, the only modern amenities coming into that building are electricity and phone lines. So we have some work to do to bring that up to our standards of what we do for worship. You can see the beautiful tin ceiling. It's one of the things that we want to save in this building. We love the architecture of this building, and it's great that we can blend the old with the new and bring some modern influences into what's already a beautiful building. There's another picture of that ceiling. Outside, also one of the history things that we want to preserve are the coat hooks. Those are the original coat hooks that you can see outside that door, and we'd like to be able to keep those. We're going to change the platform of the sanctuary. If you were there, you saw that it was a rounded stage. We want to just square that off. It makes it more user-friendly for our worship teams, so I don't need to fall off the edges, and we can fit all our instruments on there. If you leave the sanctuary and you go through the door in the front part of the sanctuary, you enter into the Annex building, and you'll enter into the 3rd floor of the Annex building. And right now, it's made up of very chopped up little classrooms. These are a couple pictures of them, and you can tell they're really tiny classrooms. They're almost like bedroom size. We need to just knock down a few walls and open that up and expand it. And this is what one of the top floor could look like. This could be a classroom for our middle school grades is what we're thinking. It would also allow for an office and a green room, which is for our worship arts team to be able to store their equipment and be able to meet when they're coming off of stage. Oh. Sorry, I'm going to go back one more. There's also a picture on this one. It shows where the elevator would start. We're not exactly sure exactly the place where that elevator will be, but all the architects that we met with, they said because of the lineup of the buildings, on the first floor they don't quite line up completely. It's about a half a floor. So the best placement for an elevator is in the corner of the two buildings, the old building and the Annex building. And that will allow one door to open onto one building and the other door to open onto the other building. So that's how we can solve that accessibility problem and get to every single floor. Because right now there's a chairlift and will only bring you to 2 different rooms. You won't be able to access the whole building from it currently. So if you come down 1 floor in the Annex to the 2nd floor, we're looking at the first picture is straight down the hallway. And it's, again, made up of a lot of chopped up little rooms. So we want to expand some of them. At the very end of the room, the hallway is the largest room. It's the library currently. And that's the bottom picture that you can see. So that's a good size room that we could keep. And the other ones you can see on the side is they're smaller, and there just needs to be some expansion. So we'll open those up so we can have a much bigger space for our kids to meet. And also, all of our rooms will be equipped with technology. They'll have flat screen TVs and computers so that these will be used throughout the week for anyone. Adults can be in there, kids can be in there. This is how we have taken care of our building here as well as in Raymond so that all of our classrooms are accessible for everyone. You can see where the elevator lines up there. On the first floor of the Annex building is actually what seems and feels and smells a little bit like a basement. If some of you got to go down there, well, we want to fix that problem, and we want that to be a true first floor. And it really can be because the windows are above grade, and there is an external door. So if we open that door up with a glass door, and we knock down some of the walls to really let the light in, and we take care of the water issue that there is. Thankfully, there's not been any water. We just went through a pretty hard rainstorm a couple weeks ago, and there wasn't a drop in the basement. So we were pretty excited about that. But there's still a little bit of a smell, a little mustiness down there. So we're going to fix that with some vapor barrier as well as some drainage that we're looking into. So these are just some pictures. The first one is the hallway, and we just want to open those walls right up. There's a picture of some of the classrooms. It's a storage closet, and the bottom one is our utility room. There's a lot of space down there, but what is housed right now, currently down there, is N68 Hours of Hunger. Their food pantry that they provide food for kids at the Kittery school is housed in our building right now, and they're very excited to stay there. So we want to give them a much nicer place to work, because right now they're stuffing food in a very musty kind of smelling place. So we can fix that for them and make it even more friendly. Because right now they have over 100 volunteers who come from the community every week into our building. So that's a pretty great way to outreach already. So when we're done knocking down some of those walls and opening it right up, we want to fix the bathrooms that are down there, freshen those up, expand out the room so there's more space. And you can see we left a large area for storage for food for N68 Hours of Hunger. These are all the bathrooms that are going on in the building. You can see we have the side pictures and the top picture are all pictures of the bathrooms in the fellowship hall space. Like we said, we want to keep one of those bathrooms and then add additional ones. The very bottom picture is one of the basement bathrooms that we want to modernize. So here's that external ramping that we were talking about removing, making it much more user-friendly, because you'll be able to enter onto this deck, and you'll also be able to access the elevator straight from there. So you'll be parking much closer to the building if you need handicap accessibility, and you'll be able to enter in much quicker. Right now we have the 2 chair lifts. There's one that goes down to the bottom floor of the Annex building, and one that goes up the winded staircases to the sanctuary. So those are the only handicap accessibility in the building right now. And you cannot access the whole building from them. You miss several floors. That is the stairwell that I told you that the buildings do not line up from. There's a little jog. You can see it's not quite a full stairwell. It's only 5 steps, so it's about a half of a floor. So that's why we need to have an elevator that can access both buildings from each, one door opening to one and one door opening to the other. The corner of the building is where we talked about putting this elevator, and so that's where the corner would be, right there where there's a door that is currently not used at all. But we'll be working that with the architect and figuring out the best placement for that elevator. This is a picture back up into the sanctuary. I don't know if any of you got to go up above the sanctuary into the bell tower. Did anyone get to journey up there? A few of you did, yeah. Well, that clock, above that is actually another floor above the sanctuary. So we want to cut into that. What used to be open, it used to house the organ and possibly a choir loft. We want to bring the tech booth and put that up into that space. That leaves us more floor space for people worshiping on a Sunday morning and moves the tech booth right out of the sanctuary because the current tech booth that's there is not big enough for what our needs. So we would have to have been expanded, and that way we would be losing more of our seats. When you go up into the belfry area, right before you get there, it's almost like a barn up there. It's full of big wood structure. It's very beautiful. And if you continue up a lot of stairs, you get to the very top where there's a bell. And the bell is inscribed, First Free Will Baptist Church, Kittery Point, Maine, 1885. And it's ringing, and we're excited to hear it ringing once again. And I hope that you are too.
Thank you, Ellie and Debbie. Very exciting. As you follow this project in the next few months and on into September to the opening, you'll see in the weekly bulletin updates all along. I'm sure that there will be other more formal presentations to talk to you about how the resource flow is going and how the actual project is proceeding out of Kittery Point. So we're going to keep everything very transparent and very available for you as you watch this great project unfold. So I'd like to talk now about this guide to giving, I call it. How to participate, why should we give at all, how much, and how to do it. So we'll go take you right through that pretty quickly here. The first way all of us can contribute and have been from staff to congregations in both Raymond and here is through the prayer. We need to cover this project in prayer from beginning to end. And prayer for protection, prayer for resources, prayer for safety, prayer for a good end result. Time is another. We all have some time, some more than others, but we are hoping that in some way or another, each of you could find a time to either come visit, to encourage, to participate, and to do a simple task that might need to be done as we start to move into the building later next year. We have a number of people in the congregation, as you know, who are very, very talented. We talked about the structural engineers, for example. We have a number of tradesmen who are very, very capable electricians and finish carpenters, and on it goes. We are able to accommodate the use of those skills. The general contractor that we're considering has made it clear that, assuming they meet the minimal criteria for being able to do work in the state of Maine, that we'd love to have them join our team. So if you have that skill or know somebody who does, then here's an opportunity to use it for God's work. Goods and materials. So it doesn't have to be a skill. It could be that you're a storekeeper or you know somebody who sells, let's say, kitchen equipment. And they would like to give it to us or donate it or give it to us at discount. Things of that nature would help keep the cost down too. So there's lots of different ways for people to help make this project come off, short of giving money. The last one is that we do need money. We need about $750,000 we anticipate. So it's going to require a very generous effort on part of the congregations here in Raymond to make that happen. So the why give is interesting. And this is really right back to the heart of it all. Matthew 28 is very well known to you. Bruce preaches on it and speaks to it all of the time. An old soldier that I am, I see this as a command. Not a suggestion. It's not a, well, why don't you consider doing this? It's really saying, go. That's a very, very direct verb. And I understand what that means. So this church has always understood and always implemented and always put its resources behind making the Great Commission work for this region. So that's the imperative we're following. That is the journey. That is the mission we're talking about. When we talk about one campaign, we talk about one mission. This is it. One journey, the process by which we expand and do this work. In this case, the Kittery Point Church. And one church. One church. 2 campuses, 1 church. And when we talk about a church, we're talking about putting boots on the ground. We're talking about people coming in behind and making this campaign work. We want to see 100% participation in this effort. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But we need to work in concert, and we used to work with all the synergies that come with both campuses and all its people, prayerfully and eagerly and happily working towards this goal. There are several references in Scripture, of course, about giving back what is really the Lord's to start with. This is one that's always been careful. We want cheerful givers. We truly believe that those who give are blessed more than those who receive. And we really want you to, as you prayerfully consider supporting this project financially, that you do it cheerfully and don't feel a heavy weight about it. It's just the only weight you should be is how much it's going to be and how much you can afford to give sacrificially. There's some practical imperatives as well to why we need to give and get going on this project. Time's moving on. Every day is a day closer to September 10th. We haven't made as much progress as we might want yet because we haven't yet gained the resources to get the contractors up and going. So early giving, which could start right now as this campaign is now unfolding, will raise enough money so that we can begin to let contracts and get work done. So the demolition would likely be one of the first to go. And Deb, it's about how much for that? About $44,000 is what we need to get that job done, and so we can open up the walls and begin preparing for the tradesmen to replace the utilities. But we can't do it until we collect the $44,000 or more. If you read in the FAQ, we have a policy whereby we will not let a contract until we have in hand the amount necessary to perform that phase of the operation. So we're not going to bet on the come. We're not going to hope it comes and let it go. We're going to make sure that we're very prudent about how we do this. So the early inflow of money into the Kittery campaign particularly will be very, very useful in getting us moving quickly to accomplish the project. And obviously, if we continue to give at that rate, then we can start to knock the mortgage down too if there's a spillover effect, which we hope will happen. I have a phrase I use here is this. I used to play football and some other sports, and I was a soldier for 30 years as well. And in each case, I found out from personal experience that I wanted to be on when the football team came off the field after a win or a loss, and if my jersey was not dirty, in other words, I had not been in the fight, I really, really, really felt bad. I wanted to be part of the action. And I want the people in Bethany Church to be part of the action. I want you to get your jerseys dirty. I want you to be not a bystander. I want you to be someone who's out there in the trench. And to that effect, I have a very meaningful quote from Theodore Roosevelt in his speech at the Sorbonne in Paris in 1911, I think. I want to just show it to you for a second because it gives you the feel for the passion I feel about wanting the Bethany people in the arena. So it goes in this. It's part of his speech. It is not the critic who counts, and we have lots of critics, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. I want us all in the arena. I do not want a situation here where we have 20% of the population in the church doing 80% of the work, and the rest of us are watching and applauding them, or maybe even just not even encouraging them. This is a church effort, one mission, one journey, one church, the church collectively. So I pray that you can find ways to get yourself involved so that we can all say on that day of celebration, I got my jersey dirty. And as Jesus said, he needs you on this. He needs you on this. So how much should you give? Well, let me just run through a little bit of actual current conditions. First, it's very important, and it was a little confused back in 2008, is to understand that the donation to the one campaign is handled separately and discreetly from the giving to the general fund that you do normally. So you'll see throughout that we're asking you to make sure that you differentiate the gift so we'll know which pot to put it in and which account to credit. So right now we have 940 giving units. A giving unit could be a single person, it could be a family, it could be a couple, but people who identify as a giving unit, 940 of them. And we'd like to double that. We could. There's about 2,300 people who attend Bethany Church in a given month. We'd like to see all of those become giving units and participate. And up to this point, our annual budget is funded through your donations to the tune of about $2.2 million. If you divide the 940 into the 2.2, you come up with this number of $2,400 on average is what our giving units give annually to the general fund. Last campaign, just to review again, was we raised $2.7 million, and that was during a really, really rough time in our country's economic history. This goal is $1.9 million, about 30% less than what we raised back then successfully in dark times. So we're encouraged by the fact that we see a great potential for us to achieve this goal, hopefully soon. So again, we wanted to make sure that we're talking about regular participation by everybody, that we get this 100% participation. And if everybody could take their current giving, one way to do this, to achieve this goal of 1.9 in 2 years, is if everybody raised their giving 43% for 2 years. That would bring us out to the $1.9 million. And I'll show you the math on that in a minute. So what would that look like if you happen to be giving $2,400 a year? It may mean about $86 a month or $20 a week more for 2 more years, at which time you could revert back to your normal giving pattern. So how does this look? Well, there's that 43% again. So I'll just walk you through it real quick. $2,400 times 43 gives you that increase per year for 2 years of $1,032. You multiply that out times the giving units, you'll see that's $970,000 or so dollars times 2 years. You've got the $1.9 million. That's exactly what it will take to retire the debt and build the campus. So another way to look at it, and there's lots of ways, and by the way, on the websites and in the materials you've been handed out in services recently, there's lots of different aids to help you understand how you might want to take your specific financial situation and come up with a reasonable gift from it. But an example here, if you have an income of $50,000, this is if you're not currently giving at all. And by the way, there is a rather substantial number of people who are not able or do not give to the church regularly. So I'm hoping this category of person who's not giving at all currently might take heart to this scheme here. So if we use the 10% biblical tithe notion, which is a good place to start, you take your income, multiply it times 10%, and you would say that $5,000 a year should go to the general fund from this particular family. Then you multiply that times 0.043, which is that number I used before, 43% increase. That's an additional $2,150 per year for 2 years. And so then you would have a total gift then for 2 years of $7,150. Then you go back to $5,000. If you're currently giving using the same type of thing, same type of donations, if your current annual donation to the general fund is say $2,000, you multiply that times 43%. There's $860 additional to be given, and then your total gift would be $2,860, then back to $2,000 for 2 years. So this is just some ideas about how you might want to see what it would take if all of us got behind it. That's at 940 giving units. That 43% at current giving rate would get us there. I'd like to see us share the burden even better. I'd like to see us not stay with 940, but to have 1,600 giving units and make it easier for us to get to the goal and to be more equitable about how we bear the burden. So how to give, part of the things you need to know about our goals. We want to make sure that we're giving, again, as I said, that Lisa and her staff can make sure that they're assigning your generous gift to the right pot to make sure it goes to the Kittery Point project or to the general fund. And we're going to make sure that we provide you with updated receipts monthly to let you know how you're doing so that you will be reassured that we are receiving your gifts and we're putting it in the right spot. And if there's any issues about that, of course, we'd encourage you to contact us to make sure that we have all that stuff aligned properly. And then, of course, every year you'll receive your tax reports for deductible giving that you can use at the end of the tax year. The ways to give have been contained in, again, materials that have been given to you at each of the services and are available on the way out the door tonight. But the ways to give are quite obvious, but some of them may not be as obvious as you think. Automatic withdrawal, which we recommend, sort of like your car payment or your mortgage payment or your rent, sort of comes out. You don't ever see it. It's just know it's going to come out. It's taken care of. That's automatic. That can be set up online, or we just visit Lisa up in the office, and she'll be able to work that for you. A personal check, if you do a personal check, make sure that your personal information is on the check so we can credit it to the right account, and that you put in the memo line or in the payee line the one campaign versus, say, the general fund. Cash, if you use cash, it's harder to trace, so we don't know who's giving it unless you take an envelope and there's some in your pew, take it out that has one campaign on it, and then you can mark that, and then inside of that you can put your contact info so that we can credit that contribution to your account. Look online again for ways to give. You can go to the website and you'll see ways to do it. Appreciated assets. Deb mentioned that a little bit earlier. We had a gentleman who at Kittery, after hearing the Kittery presentation, came up and said he had a very rare document, original, that he loved and treasured, but he was feeling led to go ahead and donate this document, which he thinks in an auction, an international auction, might bring a substantial amount of money. So there's an example of an appreciated asset. Others are stocks, bonds, automobiles, works of art, things that you may have that have real value that you'd like to donate to this cause. Gifts in kind, we talked about earlier. That's taking the skills that you have, materials that you have, and you want to donate to the project. Deb and Allie are both have contact numbers in the FAQ and online, so that you can, if you have a desire to do that, you can contact them directly and they'll schedule it in. And finally, we have a number of people, older people frequently, who have come up afterwards and said, I can't give now, but I want to make sure that I do give for a legacy gift, and I wanted to include it in my estate planning process. So that can be done too. We have lawyers and estate planners in the congregation who have already said, I'd be glad to help anybody who wants to do that. So lots of ways to help give. The pledge card, Bruce has been very, very good about explaining, and Tim and Dirk have all been very explicit about how to do this pledge card. There's 3 pieces to it. The one on the left side is where you actually will put in the type of donation you wish to pledge. The center card is your contact information. Those 2 cards are split. One goes in one pile, one goes in another pile, and only one person up in the office, Lisa, will get to put those 2 together to see who's pledged what. And the third card is the one you put on your refrigerator or on your desk or on your bulletin board, which reminds you every day to, 1, pray for this operation, and 2, that you have made a commitment and we'd like to see you follow through on it. Pledge Sunday is the 20th, next week. This is the Pledge Sunday is the time when we'd like to see pledges begin to return. We'll be receiving pledges all the way through December 7th. And on December 14th, I'm sorry, December 4th, December 4th, and on the 11th, Bruce will make an announcement as to how the campaign is progressing. So the 20th is a goal. We start receiving donations, and also when we hope that everyone has by that time received a pledge card. And then the sooner we can get it back in, the sooner we can begin planning as to how much money we can anticipate and start to alert the contractors to clear their calendars to begin work early part of next year. So next steps, there is pledge cards at the back of the room. If you wish to take one, and have already made a decision, and you're able to do that tonight, that'd be fine. If not, please take it and prayerfully discuss with your significant other how much you might be able to give to the campaign, and then encourage others to do it and prayerfully and generously give to the church. And we look forward to a celebration. Now, right now on December 11, will be a sort of a pre-celebration. We're going to celebrate the generosity and the progress we've made in this campaign. But periodically, as I mentioned throughout, we're going to be doing progress reports to you to make sure that you're aware of what's going on. At some point, I hope that Bruce will call everybody together to go over and we'll just put a great big bonfire together and toss that mortgage on it as well. So it's a great goal to have. Takeaways, as I say, most of those are already out on the table. If you haven't already received them, they're available to you tonight. So at this time, I'd like to mention again that we will be available out in the rotunda afterwards to answer any questions you may have. And now I'm going to ask Pastor Bruce to come up and close us in prayer, and with a brief exhortation here.
You know, a number of years ago, it was probably around 2005, 2006. I came to Bethany Church on 03. So it wasn't too hard to remember. But it was a number of years after that attendance was really going really well. And we began to think about what we would do to expand. And we started to have a number of different kind of meetings, and Donnelly Woods was one of the architects, along with Phil Tambling, and they designed this building. And these outer walls here were meant to be able to extend them out. So all this conversation came and said, well, maybe what we could do is just make this a little bit bigger. And I distinctly remember going home one night. I had just finished listening. We had a class here with Andy Stanley called Lost, and it had to do with financial management. And in that, he had referenced the story of the rich man that had a bountiful crop. And he looked, and he didn't have barns that were sufficient to store all of the crop. And so he went and tore them down. He built new barns, and then he filled them up, and then basically, he sat back and said, soul, take thine ease, for you have plenty. And it says that the Lord spoke to him and said that he was a fool. And the reason why he called him a fool is because he says, you made two really severe miscalculations. One, you thought that crop was for you. And today, your life is going to be required of you. And second, you made another miscalculation. You thought just because you had a lot, it meant that translated into a long life. And that, too, is not the case. And so he ends with that famous verse, right? What's it a profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? So I'm driving home, and I started thinking about that in the context of the discussions that we had about expanding our building. And I can tell you, I just felt like the Lord said to me, you don't really need a bigger barn. What you ought to be thinking about is filling up the empty barns that are all around you. And all of a sudden there was this shift about, well, maybe God had raised Bethany Church so that we might be that kind of catalyst to go out and help to raise the spiritual, landscape in our state. And then I began to read more and more about the statistics of all the churches in our area and how, like, the average attendance is about 42 people, most of which is a senior. That we're at the lowest rung on the ladder when it comes to church attendance in all of the country, 1.7%. You can go back and look at AmericanChurch.org. And you can see the statistics there for yourself. They break it down state by state. And New Hampshire is all the way in the bottom. It wasn't long after we had that discussion that now it was around 2007 that I received an email from a church in Raymond. And it really wasn't until we just started having these vision meetings that in my mind I just put those two things together. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? I never really thought about it, but that letter came as a result, right after we had this whole thought about not building a bigger barn, but filling up other barns. And then we got a letter from Raymond that said that they had been reduced to about 12 people, and would we be interested in engaging them in some conversation about maybe taking over their building. When we decided to do that, we called a committee together, and Deb was a part of that, and Drew O'Keefe, was helping us, and Dennis Rooney was also on that committee. You might remember Judy Reynolter. Judy was on there. So there was a bunch of us that got together and started thinking about how we're going to make this work. And right around that time, as is always the case, and I'm sure everybody here could testify, right? You start to go out and do God's work, and things start falling apart sometimes, don't they? It's almost like the Lord is asking, like, well, how much do you really want to do this? Because right around the time that we were going to do that, a number of things happened. One, we began to get notifications from people that they thought there was like mold down in the basement. And that the mold down in the basement was now beginning to seep into the walls. And if that was the case, we were going to have to shut down the whole downstairs and mitigate that entire problem, which would have meant, what do you do with all of your children? What do you do with all of the programming? It would have been a devastating blow. And then at the same time, we found that there was all kinds of leaks that were happening in our roof, so that the roof that was put on this building, and it was, in the year 2000, it was already showing signs that it needed to be replaced. So at the same time now we're thinking about this new church, now we're thinking about all of these added expenses that nobody was, anticipating. And then the third shoe to drop was right around the time when we started entering into the worst recession that we experienced. So in 2008, right around November, all of a sudden everyone's 401ks went south. They were now 50% of what they had anticipated. Around that time, I remember I was asked to be a part of a small group, and some of you know who Bill Hybels is. Bill Hybels pastors Willow Creek Church in South Barrington in Illinois. And we had this meeting, and it was really just a one-day meeting. It wasn't even a day. He asked us if we would fly out to Chicago, meet at the airport, and then as soon as this meeting was over, we were going to fly and just come right back home. So he asked me to come as part of this Northeast contingency, so I went. And so I thought, well, while I'm here, these guys, they're on the forefront of all kinds of new changes, and they're really, pretty aggressive. So I sat down and I asked Bill Hybels, I said, look, our church is right in the middle of this, and we're going to have to replace our siding. So all the siding around this building had to be replaced. Fortunately, there was no mold issues downstairs, but that took a number of people coming in and examining that too. We had to replace the entire roof. I mean, the entire roof on this building had to be done. It wasn't even 10 years old. And then we had the issue over at Raymond where they asked us to put sprinklers in, and that was another $135,000 that no one anticipated. So it's just like one shoe after another. But I'll tell you the truth. Our group, we all held pretty tight, because you understand, you try to do something good for the Lord, there's always going to be some kinds of repercussions. None of these things were insurmountable. They were just like not what you were anticipating. I'll never forget at that meeting, Bill Hybels looked at me and says, yeah, like you got to be crazy if you think you're going to raise money in this environment. And I'm not aggrandizing at all. I'm telling you the exact truth. When he said that to me, how it hit me was I got back on that plane and I thought, yeah, it probably is the most craziest thing to do is to ask for money right now. But that means that if we're going to do it, it's going to be because God is in it. And if God is in it, then what are you worried about? So that's where my head was, right? Like I just took it in the opposite direction. I served on the board for Denver Seminary, and there was a man there, and he's spoken here at Bethany Church a couple of times. His name was Bob Seipel. Bob Seipel was our ambassador for religious freedoms for the United States. Bob Seipel was a pilot in the Marine Corps, flew many, many missions in Vietnam, came back, became the president for Eastern Baptist College and Seminary, went on to become the president for World Vision, and then from there, he became part of one of our ambassadors for the country. So when I sat alongside Bob Seipels one day, and I said, Bob, I got to talk to you a little bit because I have this fundraising thing that I got to do at the church, and I'm sure your whole life was doing fundraising with college and then with World Vision and then as ambassador. I said, can you give me some really good advice? And no joke, this is what he said to me. He said, all right, look, I'm going to tell you, this is the bottom line. The best time to ask for money is when you need it. Yeah, he said, the best time to ask for money is for when you need it. And I thought, like, that's it? Like, that's the big advice. But it turned out to be true because we came and we went before the congregation at the worst possible time, and we raised almost $3 million, which I think is a tremendous testimony to the people here at Bethany Church. Not only did we secure this building for many, many years to come, but we also raised up Raymond, and there is great fruit that is a result of that ministry. So I think, okay, now God just opened up this other opportunity for us to go. And the desire is to see the spiritual landscape being raised in the whole country. One of the things that is a blessing here at Bethany Church is there's great people who have, they just have a tremendous acumen for organization and for projects. So I think when we all get together, God has put this team together to do some really extraordinary things. You've heard me say this for a long time. Like, I think Bethany Church is a 10-talent church. And if we're a 10-talent church, God is asking us to do 10-talent things, not so that we can brag, but if God gave you 10 talents, it's because he wants you to use 10 talents. And if you use 10 talents, then that means you're going to do something really amazing. So if that's the kind of church that we have, then we ought to step into that breach and do something amazing, recognizing that it's not going to be us, it's going to be him. And so now all of a sudden you get a letter, and here you have this building now in Kittery Point. And if you were here this morning, you heard me tell you, like, not only the fact that we have over 400 kids that are a stone's throw away from the church, it's just a little less than 2 miles from the Naval Shipyard. I mean, it's a part now of neighborhoods that are completely being changed over. It was pretty senior at one moment, and now a lot of those homes are being sold off to younger families. So it is a great opportunity. And the only thing that remains is for people to just participate. So we do the best we can to make sure that we're giving everybody the right information. This is not trying to be a salesman. It's just saying, look, here's a need. We live in a spiritually dark part of the world. There is means that we have to be able to resource a project like Kittery. And one of the things that I don't get a chance to talk too much about is our mortgage. When we built this building, people moved from Rye, and they built this building, and they took a mortgage and built it. And now that mortgage, we only have a little bit over $1 million left. But as our congregation gets a little older, who's going to pay that mortgage? It's kind of like when you think of our national debt, right? We keep on increasing that debt, and who's going to pay that debt? Now all of a sudden it's our kids and our kids' kids. And we're saddling them with this huge debt. Where I think that now, if we paid this debt off, it puts the church in the most financially secure position so that it could weather all the storms and give us an opportunity to reach out to those next generations that are coming along, who, because of the station in life that they're in, they don't have that kind of excess money sometimes to really give, the way those who are boomers or builders. So I think it's a great thing to do now, to place the church in the best position so that we can continue to do what God is asking us to do. And I recognize that God, He will never leave us hanging. So if there are some detours around the way, then so be it, because it's His church. It's not mine, it's not yours. It's His. But it shouldn't be because we were hesitant. It shouldn't be because we're afraid. It ought to be because God is beginning to reveal something more of His purposes. But being afraid is not an option. He has given us a spirit of courage and of power, not of timidity. And so I'm just asking you to think about that. We're going to pray this whole week. We're not asking you to do anything that our staff isn't doing. In fact, we have an elders meeting this week, and all the elders are coming together to participate so that we sign those pledges first. Because you got to lead by example. So that's what we're going to do. And now we're just praying that the word gets out through our congregation. I wouldn't be too disheartened about this attendance, because a lot of people, they've been asking, they've been getting the information. They know what the deal is now. So what I'm hoping, it's kind of like what just took place in this past election. There is this little silent, going on, and we're all going to be amazed at what comes in next week and in the weeks that follow. So I'd just like to really just thank you for coming out and just shared a little bit of our heart for this. And I think we're up for the challenge. God's going to do something great. Yeah. Should I pray? Yeah. Okay. Why don't you just bow your head with me in a word of prayer, shall we? Father, I want to thank you again for your grace and for your goodness. Lord, sometimes those become phrases that we just throw out. But when we really think about it, your grace is what enables us to be in relationship with you. Your goodness inspires us, Lord, so that we can become more and more transformed into your image. The Apostle Peter wrote in his letter that you call us by your glory and your goodness. It's because we see in you, Lord, a compassion and a kindness that is unparalleled. We see in you a goodness that says a smoldering wick you will not snuff out, or a bruised reed you will not break. Two metaphors that speak of something very vulnerable. And yet you, our Heavenly Father, you step into that breach, Lord, and it's all about redeeming and restoring. And so when we see this grace and this goodness being modeled by you, it gives us courage. And now we're a little more attentive, Lord, to the promises that you give us. And those promises, they change us so that we have a new identity and we approach life in a much different way. And we find ourselves now participating in your divine image, and we find ourselves, Lord, escaping the corruption that's all around us. More than anything, Lord, we want to see those fans of revival visit our state. We want to be able to say at the end of our days that we have taken you seriously and experienced, Lord, what it's like to champion your causes. In the process, Lord, it makes us better individuals. It places us in the best position to be the best spouses. And if you've blessed us with families, Lord, to be good parents and neighbors. Because now you are working in and through us, Lord, and we learn to live a little bit more selflessly. So my prayer, Lord, is that you just bless our efforts. Bless them, Lord, so that your word and your kingdom will increase and abound. Bless all who are present here. And may we see, Lord, our tribe increase. Because we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. God bless you. Amen. Amen.